like number 9 with lead-based paint. The property was or was not. I would bet 75% of the time it doesn't get answered either way. So then I'm going to make you do an amendment. So why do the extra work? Y'all don't need to have time for it. Just answer the question.
Answer the questions from the get-go. Now, just because everything is on the first page does not mean you do not need to know what the other, 10 pages of the contract? 8 pages are.
8 total.
The remainder of the contract, every paragraph corresponds to the paragraph on the first page and goes into greater detail about it. I encourage you to read through the contract. Just take one read of it when you leave here today. If you're getting ready to write a contract, take a moment, read through that contract before, you know when you're taking out a buyer and they're pretty interested. Read through that contract, make sure that you know what it says in there. 99% of questions that your buyers and sellers will have are right in the contract. I always look to the contract first when people ask me. If I don't know it off the top of my head, I will get straight to the contract and look through it and find the answer. All right.
Y'all tell me where you want to go.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Oh, okay, we're good. All right, let's start just right up here at the top. First, so offer date. This is just fill in the date when you send the offer over, whatever that is. Going down, property. Number 1, purchase sale agreement, property ID, address. Fill in your address, city, county. We see a lot of amendments being signed at closing, the lenders requiring that the city be changed, because now that all of these little cities have incorporated, there's Brookhaven and
Johns Creek,
Duluth. Yeah, but some people are just automatically default to Atlanta. Lenders will have you adjust it to whatever is on the USPS website. MLS number, tax ID number. If you know the tax ID number, go ahead and put that in. It's just useful because people will look up the tax information on their own. We do not transfer property in Georgia using property addresses or tax ID numbers. The only way we transfer property is by the legal description of the property. So this is one of the most important paragraphs, yes, I think, in the contract. If you don't have a legal description, you basically have a voidable contract, because the legal description is the meat of the whole contract. It's what they're buying and selling. It drives me bonkers when I see a special stip attached for the legal description to be provided 3 days later. You technically have a voidable contract during those 3 days that you don't have a legal description attached.
And it's voidable by either party, so the seller can say,
yes,
"Oh, I'm not going to sell it to you because we don't have a legal description." It's voidable.
To get a legal description, you can either, I say if you are taking a listing, go ahead and ask your seller to go find their documents, find their warranty deed, because it'll have the legal description on there. You can attach it in FMLS. You know what they're selling, you know what they own, what they're selling. It'll also tell you who owns the property, who's on title to the property, which is always good to know. Ask them for that, their payoff, HOA information, just good things to get just right when you're taking a listing. If the legal description is not in FMLS, feel free to use the closed KW email. We have somebody monitoring it pretty much all the time, so they can get you a legal description of the property.
Super quick.
It's usually they're super quick. Brandy's amazing getting that done. And then you can just attach it as an exhibit. I always encourage everyone to just attach it as an exhibit. I see more people mess this up when they're trying to fill in the blanks by themselves. So if you have a copy, the easiest thing to do is just attach it as an exhibit to the contract.
Renee, would you even say don't pick 2, 3, and 4?
Two you have to pick.
2 you have to pick if it's a condo.
Okay.
And they even tell you what form to pull, which is the other change that was made a year or so ago. Anything like that, or if the attorney's holding the earnest money, the form numbers are there, so there's no reason for you not to be able to pull those forms.
And look, sometimes you cannot get the legal description, or you're just having to go off the best information available. Most of the county tax websites will reference a deed book and page for the property, and it's usually the last deed filed. So I don't love that one because a lot of times people will go to Home Depot or not Home Depot, Office Depot and do a quick claim deed and they'll totally screw up the legal description, so it's totally wrong in there. But that's what the county's still gonna reference because it's the last deed that they received. But again, you just want something referenced. You can always amend it later if you realize that it's changed. Sometimes if we get the title exam back and it's, completely different from what's in the contract, the lender will have us amended also. So just put the best information you have available. But if you have the legal description, I would say don't do this. Don't fill it in. I've seen the most
People get dyslexic.
I've
when they
seen the
start
most
filling in the
seasoned
blanks.
agents totally screw it up, and they'll mess up like the land lot. They'll put the land lot in for the lot number, so it doesn't identify the property at all. But we need our best available information in that one. Any questions? All right, number 2, purchase price. It's pretty cut and dry. Just put the numbers in, but it's always numbers. Don't spell it out.
Correct.
Just 245,000.
And no cents, just dollars.
Well, yeah, every now and then.
That would
I
be
will actually-
hilarious. I don't know if
Every
I've
now
ever
and then,
forgotten
I
one.
will see somebody do that. Don't ask me why.
Like $199.99.95.
Uh-huh.
Like the Price is Right. I've never gotten one like that. Now I want to be on the lookout. 99 cents. All right.
What's it cost?
Closing costs. This is how much the seller is going to pay toward the buyer's closing costs at closing.
Assuming they are.
Assuming they are, if they're putting anything in. Get this number from your lender. Your buyer should have already been working with the lender hopefully before you even put them in your car to take them out to show property. They should have a really good idea of what their sales price point is, what their loan amount's going to be, and what the loan is going to cost them. It's really, I think at the beginning, it's very difficult to estimate what closing costs are going to be because it can vary from loan program to loan program. And so, you may not be aware of exactly what's going on with your buyer. You want to get that from the lender.
Well,
Go ahead.
and the one reason you want to get as close as you can is you don't want to arbitrarily say $5,000 in closing costs, because if the closing costs only end up being $3,000, any remainder goes back to the seller. So your buyer's going to go, I just gave you $2,000. So you want to get as close as you can.
Yeah, because you don't want to leave that money on the table. Every time it happens at closing, the person they look to is their agent, and they're not happy with you that you
underestimated. Yeah.
Or no, I guess
No, it is
overestimating the closing costs. We are math geniuses.
Yes, we are. And technologies are.
Math and tech. We're right on those. So
if they're not contributing anything, what do they put in that?
Zero.
Okay, don't leave it blank.
Correct.
All right, closing and possession date. Closing date, just gonna put it in. Then here's another space where you have to check a box. The possession of the property is either gonna be transferred to the buyer at closing, which means once it's closed, once it's funded. And that's what we consider closed. When I can hand checks out to everybody, then that's considered closed. Or 70 days after closing. If they are taking possession after closing, you must attach the temporary occupancy agreement. It has to be part of the contract. And again, they have the form right there to make it very easy to find.
Can I ask a quick question on closing costs?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a cash deal, right, and so they're like title warranty, or like if you do it just like guarantee of the title.
Yeah,
How much
it's basically attorney's fees, title insurance,
Title
and
insurance, so
recording and transfer tax. So
what does title
usually-
insurance generally run?
you can look online. It is calculated by the title insurance company, so you can go I use Fidelity a lot, so you can go to Fidelity National Title. You can just Google Fidelity National Title Insurance Calculator, and it'll hit you to the page, and you can, based on it, you can put the sales price in, and it'll tell you exactly what it is.
Okay.
It's not and like y'all's forms, I after everyone to change them, because a lot of the affiliated business disclosures have like $1 to $3 per thousand, and it's not.
We just
It's
changed
really
it,
not.
did you
I
not?
think y'all changed one of them.
We just redid them in February, and
Okay.
everybody was supposed to have done the input, meaning Gannett
Okay.
and certainty and connect.
Okay.
We'll double check.
Double check.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not like $1 per thousand. They all have rate calculators. They change the rates occasionally. I can know within the last year they've all changed their rates. So I don't estimate it. I just look it up and find out what it is. You can also, if you have a lot of people that have buyers that are looking to purchase for cash, they'll contact us and give us the property address that they're looking at, and we can put together. It won't have HOA dues unless you give those to us. But we can put together basically a preliminary HUD based on the closing date that comes, really close to what it's actually it's a prelim, but it comes really close to actually what their costs are gonna be because.
And
ours
usually
are
with
listed.
cash, a lot of times the buyer pays their own closing costs anyway.
Most of the time, but I have, I
you
did
seen
a
it?
cash last week where the seller gave a little bit in closing costs.
Yeah, and I guess my point was if it's $1,500 on your, for your title insurance,
Mhm.
I mean, that's something that you can go back and ask the seller to potentially cover.
Mhm.
Yes. And then, I don't want to get us too off track, but I did have a closing where the seller was paying closing costs and then the buyer decided at closing, well, I'm just going to waive title insurance and I'm just going to pocket that money. Well, we were there for an hour and a half while they debated all of this. The seller said absolutely not. We agreed to pay actual closing costs, not to just give you money.
Right.
So, needless to say, dude ended up getting the title insurance policy. But so if you are doing cash, just kind of be aware of that. Sellers only want to pay for the things that you're getting. It's not a charge credit. Otherwise, you just take that off the top of the sales price.
Skip to closing attorney, because then we'll do earnest money. And
Okay.
we need Ellie to do a few, that's number 6, go back down.
And sorry, Renee, I did not fill in your name.
So this is a good lesson. So when you have a closing attorney, put a name in. I want you to put in Gannett PC every single time. You can even put my name in. I like seeing that. But don't put in TBD. That drives me nuts. It's determined by buyers, determined by somebody else. Most buyers don't know closing attorneys. Most of my friends know that I'm an attorney, but they don't even know what I do. So most people do not know closing attorneys. Also, if you let the seller pick, you're giving up control. You're giving up an element of control of the transaction. So you want to close somewhere where you have a relationship with, the people. We are always going to make y'all a priority. You want to put something in there. Just don't put TBD in there. Also, like a lot of firms, we have multiple locations of our firm. So it's often helpful if, say you're closing on a Lawrenceville property where we have an office, where everyone might just assume that it's going to be closing at the Lawrenceville office, but everyone works over here at Perimeter, so you're going to be closing here. You may want to specify in their Gannett PC, Perimeter office.
No, not may, they will.
You should
Where's
specify,
if
where it
the
is.
Attorney has multiple locations, you've got to specify which one.
Because it's not
That's
always
my rule.
intuitive. Especially I feel like with our office and the Midtown office, because so many people work in this area and work in Midtown, that we have people kind of showing up at each other's office all the time because it's not often intuitive based on the property address where it's closing. So it just keeps everyone on the same page. Yes.
In the MLS, you're seeing more and more these days where it says, all right, we're going to sell this house for $100, but the closing attorney must be Fred Flintstone and Company. How much wiggle room is there in that?
You just counter.
Okay.
There's
Usually if they're specifying, usually there's a reason.
usually that reason is because
They have control there.
Well, that broker has a JV
Right.
with that law firm, and the
Right.
broker makes money off of closing there.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 scenarios. Yes, it can be that they're just trying to steer you towards their organic,
Yes.
their preferred.
Hey, listing agents do it to us all the time, so we like that.
But then there are the situation when it's a flipper by an LLC and they want you.
Builders
So speak
always
to that.
You're not gonna win
always
that
have
one.
a preferred attorney,
Yeah.
and honestly, even though a lot of them are going to do a terrible job for you, it's easier to get the transaction closed if you just go with the builder's attorney. Builder also usually gives monetary incentives to close with their attorney, so it's generally a better deal. Also, if you're looking at like REOs, like foreclosures, those types of places, they're gonna have a preferred attorney as well. So sometimes
Relocation companies.
relocation does oftentimes too, so.
Can't fight it.
Yeah.
Can't those.
Yep.
Now, I will say, the Zillows and the Knox and the Open Doors, they are starting to partner up with attorneys, and they are not partnering up with the best attorneys in town, needless to say. So those, feel free to counter. You're not going to get the best closing experience. I've had to actually go in and save a few deals and do some work for a closing that I'm not even working on to get it closed, because some of them aren't even closing attorneys. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
It's a
need you
little.
to speak to that in a sales meeting too.
Okay, we're gonna make a list.
We are.
Start writing it down.
So generally, like if it's builder, if it's relay or foreclosure, just know that you're probably closing with their attorney. Otherwise, feel free to counter, particularly if, it's your buyer, your lender, you want everyone working as close as possible and working in your best interest. If somebody has a relationship with Zillow or not, they're working on that relationship. That's the relationship that's important to them, so that's who they're gonna do the best job for. It's not gonna be you or your buyer.
Right. But if there's a loan involved, the closing attorney is supposed to be working for the lender. They're not supposed to be representing either party. But if you have Renee on your side, at least if you have a question, or she's gonna give you an answer, whereas the seller's preferred attorney might, not give you the answer you need to hear, or might just not go into detail about it. So, best to stay with who you know, if you can. Okay.
All right,
Earnest money.
earnest money, holder.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so holder of earnest money, it is generally gonna be the buyer's broker.
Mhm.
So if you're representing the buyer, it's gonna be Keller Williams, Atlanta Perimeter. If for some reason the closing attorney is holding the earnest money, there are forms that you're gonna have to attach.
One gets attached.
One gets attached, and then I have to sign one. I don't like holding earnest money that much. It doesn't happen that often. Are you ready to talk?
Yeah,
Okay.
just for a little bit, and then I can go into more
No,
detail
go
later.
ahead.
Whatever.
Go
Go ahead.
Okay.
You're fine.
Hi, y'all. I'm Ellie. If I haven't met you, I think I've met most of everyone. And this is Lauren.
She's the money lady.
Are
The
you,
money ladies.
are you gonna talk to
I
this?
can do that later and just
Okay.
touch on this. I'll do this because you guys
Perfect.
have to go. Lauren and I are the money girls, so all earnest money, commission, office bills, anything, that's us. So we'll be good friends soon. Earnest money, the biggest point for number 5 is make sure you say Keller Williams Atlanta Perimeter and not just Keller Williams Realty, because there's a bunch of us and we need to know which one is supposed to be holding it. So that was the main point.
And y'all tend to have a lot of Keller transactions, especially in this area. We
Yes.
see
Yeah.
a lot of Kellers on both sides.
Yeah.
But not necessarily perimeters, we'll have.
Well, you might have
We say
Keller
like
Williams
Peachtree
supposed
Road
to
or
land
First
on one
Atlanta.
side, Keller Williams land
Or
a perimeter.
perimeters.
And if you just put Keller Williams, then we don't know.
We don't know which one.
office is holding it,
And we have to know because
Yeah.
it's due. There's due dates associated, which is what we'll
which is what you're
touch
gonna
on
talk.
next.
Yes.
So number 7, the way that it should be turned in, it should always be check. It should never be cash. And wires we don't necessarily prefer, but if you have to, just let us know and we'll work something out. But it should always be check. That can be personal, cashier's check, or money order. But with that, talk to your lender, because lenders don't really like money orders or cashier's checks. They don't
Or
really
source the funds.
They need to be able to source the funds, so they prefer personal checks. However, we like cashier's checks because it's not going to bounce. Probably it's more guaranteed funds.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, what's the difference between a cashier's check and a bank check?
So a cashier's check is a bank check it's certified funds from your
the
bank. A money order you can just go to a post office and get. So lenders prefer cashier's checks to money orders.
Mhm.
I would kind of rate them in that order: personal check, cashier's check, money orders.
Right, because a lot of people don't have checks.
Right.
The youngins don't have checking accounts.
And because you can get a bank check, no charge
From the bank.
from the bank, and you can get a certified check from the bank, and that does cost money usually, so.
Well, I think you're referring
It's
to
the
like,
same thing.
like when they have like blank checks that, I mean, I don't know, I've never seen anyone use those, but
Okay.
if you're going up to the teller, or if your buyer's going up to the teller, they're gonna get a certified check from them.
Yeah, should be like the same thing, I believe. Due dates, super important. We are held to this, so green sheets are super important. The second you guys are binding, as in both buyer and seller, everyone's signed, we need a green sheet, because then we start tracking the due date of the earnest money, and Lauren will send friendly reminders. Earnest money's due tomorrow. Some of you have probably gotten them.
And then you get my love note
and
when
then
it's late that
Yeah.
says we need an amendment.
Yes. And then when it's late, I have to send notice to all parties, and then sometimes it goes even further worse to Lynn, and then she's got to get involved. So earnest money's super important, and the due dates are really sensitive with that.
And
Don't choose A.
I would thank
Do
you, I
not
was just
choose
gonna
A.
say that.
Like, I know in all the other ones, we've like wanted to just cross out some of the options. Don't choose A. You can rarely get the check to our office the same day that you've submitted an offer. It's just a little unreasonable.
Yeah, because once it's in your hand, that check's in your hand, it has to be here. You can't carry it around while you're waiting to go binding.
Right, so that's a good point, thank you. It's not when it's in your possession, it's when it's at your brokerage's office, turned in, and we have a drop box in the workroom. So just because you have the check doesn't mean that it's on time, we have to have it. And then we have a certain amount of time to get it actually deposited into our escrow account. So I think 3 days from binding, option B
I
is
see
pretty
3,
standard.
I see 5.
But I love 5, because,
Yeah.
you know, mistakes happen, you know,
Yeah.
things are late, so.
Or if it's a holiday or the weekend. So,
Oh.
yeah, because those days
Yeah.
count. If you say 5 days on a Friday, that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So it's calendar days as far as receiving the earnest money.
And talk to your buyers about it. You know,
Ahead
if
of
they're putting, you know, I mean, we've seen now, especially with multiple offer situations, we've seen a lot higher earnest money being put down, $10,000. Well, they may not have $10,000 in their checking account right now, so they can't hand you a check. They may have to go home, move some money around, and then do it. So just talk to them to make sure that whatever you're putting in here is a reasonable amount of time for them to get you the money.
Because once Ellie or Laura notifies the other, we have to notify all parties that the earnest money's not been received if it's late. So that, gives the seller then an opportunity to terminate the contract if your buyer doesn't get it here within 3 banking days.
And sellers only have 2 opportunities in this
Yeah,
contract
that's
to
one of
terminate,
them,
and
to
this is
terminate.
one of them. So, you don't have your buyer leave. And sometimes everyone doesn't care. If earnest money gets turned in late, everyone's fine to keep moving on with the
The
transaction.
real estate commission cares.
The real estate commission cares. But don't put your buyer in jeopardy that way of losing the property. Just get the earnest money in, get it turned in.
So, Ellie, can you speak to what if they live in McDonough? And I'm just picking on
Okay,
McDonough.
yeah. So we prefer FedEx overnight. It costs a little bit of money, but it's so worth it. You can track it. That's what we recommend is FedEx overnight. It comes with a tracking number, and we know it'll be here the next day. USPS overnight
Don't
is
Don't do
horrible.
it.
Don't do
Don't do
it.
It might be cheaper, but there's a reason. It's always late. It's 3 days
do
late.
it.
So even though you pay for overnight, USPS is always late. So just do FedEx overnight. It's like $8, I think, on average. Like, it's worth it.
Should they have it to your attention, Lauren's?
Oh, thank you. Yes, either one. So Lauren Lindsay or Ellie Locklear. However, do not make sure they understand to put attention to and not
not the
actually
check.
write the
Right,
check.
not to.
Because we've had people
Yeah.
get that confused and they write the check to us. So, it's written to.
She's still here, she didn't take off with it.
No, I haven't yet. Write me a big enough one. I'm just kidding. So write it to Keller Williams. Actually, this is wrong. Sorry. It's not Realty. It's Keller Williams, Atlanta Perimeter. So that's who the check is written to, and then you can do attention to myself or Lauren. However, every FedEx that comes in, it's usually a check, so it comes to us anyway. So not a big deal.
And I just want to make another point, and I hate to keep harping on it, but the quickest way to lose your license is over an earnest money issue. So it's your responsibility to be sure that money shows up. We're not going to be tracking it, waiting, it's up to you to be sure it gets here. We have had something recently where the earnest money was never collected. Buyer terminated after due diligence, and our agent had to pay, or we had to pay. I don't know who had it. Anyway, Keller Williams.
It probably wasn't.
And-
It probably wasn't the brokerage. It was
I think we've had one of
It
each
was
situation.
usually it's usually the agent has to come out of pocket with the money because the seller is by the contract. The seller is due
Just
that
owed the money, and we never said we didn't have it.
Yeah, that was one
But
situation.
we didn't know that we were under contract. That's why we didn't know. 'cause
Green
the green
sheets.
sheet was
Green
never
sheets.
done.
We need to know so that we can help you. You've got to do a green sheet.
It is so important.
The last thing I think I'll say on that is transfers. We don't accept earnest money transfers. So say if we deposit an earnest money for one contract, and then within due diligence, your buyer changes their mind and wants to terminate and get a new contract, we can't just transfer the earnest money we're holding to that new contract. Earnest money is specific per property. It's not per buyer, because once you submit it, it belongs to the property, not to the buyer anymore, basically. So that's an
To that
unfortunate.
transaction.
Which is
Yes.
another incentive to get that earnest money in quickly, because if your buyer ends up terminating during due diligence and wants to immediately start looking at other properties, if they need that money back, the check has to cure in this account before Keller Williams can return it to you. It's 10 days on a personal check
5 on that.
and 5 on a cashier's check. So they can't, if you deposit it, terminate, 9 days in, your buyer's still gonna have to wait a day to get that check back. So everyone has to make sure that the checks don't bounce.
Bless you.
Bless you.
I can go more into detail after the class if you guys want to hang around, but I won't keep from you guys.
Okay, thanks, Ellie.
Thanks, Ellie. That was great.
You got inspection?
Sure.
Sure. Due diligence period. Once again, you're filling in the blanks. I think what we have seen mostly, the average is trended toward 10.
It's back to 10 right now.
Back to 10. It's veered anywhere from 7 to 14 over the past few years.
Mhm.
Generally when it is a seller's market, that number is smaller. When it's a buyer's market, the number is larger.
Yep.
Getting into, we're in the busy time now. So if you are putting in 7 days or, something really aggressive like 5,
Yeah.
make sure that whatever inspection your buyers want, make sure that your inspector is able to complete that during the due diligence period. That's the big problem with doing the short due diligence, is not being able to get everything done. If your buyer wants a survey of the property, which we always recommend that everyone get a survey, it's really hard to get those back within 7 days, sometimes even 10 days, depending on, if you get like a rainy week and they can't get out there, it delays all the surveys. We have seen people put a special stip in that extends due diligence just for
Well,
the survey.
there's actually a
There's
step for the survey
There you
that'll
go.
be done by a certain date. It's fill in the blank. It's a GAR special step. It's usually most of those.
But the due diligence period is important because during that time period, your buyer can get out of the contract for any reason or no reason at all. They don't even have to have a reason. It's just, it's a get out of jail free card for them.
So if you go binding today, day 1 is tomorrow. Okay? There's always some confusion.
Okay, question back to the survey and the due diligence. You said there's a special step specifically for the survey.
Correct.
So
you can, it's outside of due diligence.
that's the
If
question
you
I
write
was
it,
trying to,
if
so if
you
you
write it
have
as
that
a special
step,
form.
Yeah.
Right,
if you use that form, then it's outside of the due
Correct.
diligence. Okay.
correct.
Just remember, once the due diligence period ends, which is going to be at 11:59 on whatever the last day, Eastern Standard, whatever the last day of due diligence is, your buyer is purchasing that property as is, essentially. If you haven't negotiated repairs at that point,
Signed
Signed.
negotiated.
Signed.
Not be in the middle of negotiating repairs and due
Signed.
diligence ends.
Yeah.
And there's new language being added for that.
Good.
So Jeannie,
Just that it has to be done
Yes.
prior to the end of due diligence.
if you've got a 10-day due diligence and you, look ahead and go, gee, the last day will be Sunday, might you do something? Do you want due diligence to end on a Sunday when it's hard to track people down?
Or a Saturday night, that's even.
I mean, I just had one that was a Saturday night, and I
Mhm.
hated that, and it was
Yeah.
really it was a Friday night,
Yeah.
at 9 o'clock. I mean, I think I told you, we were negotiating it,
Mm-hmm.
and I had told them at 7, I had to be somewhere at 8 o'clock, so I told them at 7 o'clock I had to leave. We needed this done, and the due diligence was ending at 9. I ended up, because we were going back and forth and getting it done, but they were really taking their time on getting me the forms. I had my client sign the unilateral
Yes,
because
ma'am.
I was afraid that at 10 till or 5 minutes till, it wouldn't be done, and then I'd be the one trying to get the form done. We got it done, but it got done at 8:55.
Now, a lot of agents have gotten away because of this midnight stuff, the 11:59 PM, putting in a special step that all due diligence, financing, appraisal, all contingency shall end at 7 PM or 5 PM. So that you're not looking for people at midnight. Because if you miss that due diligence, the buyer loses their right to terminate. And they're gonna lose their earnest money if they don't close, assuming they get through financing. I mean, you still have financing and appraisal normally. But if they just change their mind, they're out their earnest money.
And I like what Jeannie just said about having, you have to talk to them and say, hey, look, if we're getting close and we still haven't come to an agreement with the sellers, would you like to sign the unilateral termination so that we can terminate and not be locked into this contract? So you have to give them the option. If they say, yes, that's what we want to do, then you have it and you have it ready to go.
Unilateral, not
Oh,
mutual.
Yes.
Not the mutual.
Well, but both parties still have to sign.
Both
bottom
parties still
part.
have to
Bottom
sign.
part.
It's a two-part form. The top part is whoever is terminating, they have the right to do it unilaterally. So only one person signs. The second part of the form is the earnest money disbursement. That has to be signed by buyer and seller. The form even says, top part says or, second part says and. So we can't no one can release earnest money, even if it's during due diligence, without buyer and seller agreeing.
A lot of people think that because it says unilateral, that the seller doesn't have to sign anything on it. That's
They
not
have
the
to sign
case.
bottom part.
The bottom part. And if they don't, then that's a whole nother.
That's a whole other class.
Whole
What are
nother
my
class.
current igniters? What comes into play? The 10-day rule. Remember we read about it.
10-day letter?
Yeah. The Lynn 10-day.
Yeah. Then I have to write a letter, blah, 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 for 10 days. Seller can object. If that doesn't change my mind, then 10 days later I can release the money. If they object and it changes my mind or it's not clear, then it goes into the court system and we wait and we wait and we wait. And our attorney fees come out of that earnest money. So somebody's not going to get all the money easily. You don't want to interplay.
And I've been getting a lot of calls lately. I had 2, I think, on Friday, and it was almost the exact same conversation where it was 2 days before closing, or it was closing day, and seller didn't make all the repairs, buyer now wants out based on the repair. Unless you're in a situation where you're terminating during due diligence, unless it's a really cut and dry situation, it's really hard to get that earnest money back, and it's hard to get it back in a timely manner because of what you just said.
Yeah.
People, if you're fighting about who gets it, it's going to drag out the entire transaction. And in all likelihood, no one's going to get the full amount back.
Right.
So you just gotta let your people know that once they sign this contract, it's a legally binding agreement. I feel like everyone's just clicking things now, so they don't read it. It's like shopping online almost. So people it doesn't feel, the weight of it is not isn't felt by them. So you just have to be
Yeah.
clear, hey, once we go under binding, unless you get out during due diligence, or unless your loan gets declined during the financing period, if they're
You may
financing.
lose your earnest money.
If you wanna get out of it at any other time, you may lose that earnest
It's-
money, and just let them know that.
In one of my other offices, we have a buyer who is blaming our agent because she didn't realize that there were deadlines. She didn't realize she'd lose her earnest money. She didn't realize much of anything. And so it's real important that you go over. And if you can put something in writing that, says deadlines, the form, the
I love
reminder
the
of
form.
important dates, I love that form because it
Yeah,
goes
just
to
send to
everybody in
everyone.
the transaction.
We like getting it.
Yeah, your
We
due
usually get it
diligence
inside.
ends here, your earnest money's due this date, your financing ends, your appraisal ends, everything.
Is that a GAR form?
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It's on that list, but since they changed the numbers January, I have not memorized them like I used to know. I told someone I'll be retired long before I learn the new ones again.
There's a form, and then I've seen a lot, especially the closing coordinators will, sometimes they just they basically put the form into an email and then email it out to everybody, which is nice.
And you can design your own form. We have some agents that put their name and their logos, and that's great, as long as everybody's on the same page. And it helps everybody be on the same page. This was our binding agreement date. This is our when due diligence ends. Okay, harped enough on that?
Yeah, no.
We're gonna
8B
skip
to-
8B, you don't wanna know.
8B, just.
We don't do. That's why we
Don't
put
do it.
0.
If you ever have a question about it, ask Renee or myself.
No one understands it.
And it's
no one
very,
does it properly.
very rarely used.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. Lead-based paint, again, please check whether it was or was not built prior to 1978.
One or the other. Just check the box.
Yep. And if it was, then you attach the F-316 lead-based paint exhibit. And the EPA requires that be signed before you go binding. Right? What am I trying to say?
Well, the
It's-
seller has
the
to
seller-
sign
The
before.
seller is supposed to have it.
They
in
should already
FMLS
have it in there, yeah.
before y'all even go under contract. That is not always the case. So what we recommended is if it is not in FMLS and it's not being attached to the GAR form, go ahead and attach it. Fill out the parts that you need to the best
For
of
the
your knowledge
buyer.
for the buyer, and then get it over to the seller. So that if the EPA ever comes and audits these files, you still might get fined, but at least you can show them that, you went by best practices, you did everything that you could to get the form signed.
Now, I thought you said, yes, we can initiate it and send it over, but with no signatures, because the seller's signature has to be date stamped.
Technically, it's supposed to be, the seller is supposed to have provided the form to the buyer prior to going binding.
Sometimes
Just
we
saying.
have situations where,
Seller,
I don't know.
the step is the seller will provide the lead-based paint 3 days from binding agreement date. And that one doesn't work. It's
No,
like a legal
no.
description, it doesn't work. It's one of those things that it's not a problem till it's a problem. If the file never gets reviewed by the EPA, we'll never have those $11,000 each fines. You get fined $11,000, I get fined $11,000 for each infraction.
So are you saying is it best to just have them sign this in your listing presentation?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And then just be done with it?
And upload it to FMLS with your property disclosure, community disclosure, legal description.
And keep in mind too, it's one thing that we run into, it's not just when the house was initially built, but if any portion of it is older than 1978, so a lot of people have been bringing in, we see old mantles,
Reclaimed wood.
Reclaimed wood, that's
barn
older.
doors.
But if it says it was built in 1981, you would check was not built to prior to 1978, but you still might want to attach a lead-based paint
There's
exhibit.
nothing wrong with
With
attaching
attaching
it. It doesn't obligate you to anything. It is just a disclosure form.
Yep.
I think what is it, Harry Norman, I think they require, because they got audited and hit with a lot of fines, so they just require their agents to attach it on every single
No
transaction.
matter
So-
what year it's built.
So, I mean.
No harm to do that.
No harm to do it. When in doubt, just attach it. Number 10,
Yeah.
brokerage relationships. Selling broker, this is the office. What you fill in up top is the office. So selling broker, if you're representing the buyer, selling broker is going to be Keller Williams, Atlanta Perimeter. And this is another one where, you know, sometimes you get multiple KWs. You put in QAP, put in Atlanta Perimeter, just put in KW or KW Realty. And you're either going to be working with them as a client
Which means you have a buyer brokerage agreement signed.
or as a customer, which means you do
you're
not
not
represent them.
Dual agency, we do not allow. It's not illegal, but it is our company policy that we don't allow dual agency. That would be if you had a buyer for a listing that you had, if you were on both sides. Tell me how you're going to truly represent one or the other.
You
or
cannot
both. You
negotiate
can't.
against yourself,
Yeah, that's what you're doing.
which is what you're saying you're going to do essentially.
And then designated, number 4, designated is if you're in the same office, not another Keller Williams. So if I have a buyer and you have the listing and we're both in this office, then we would check number 4 and my name would go down there under acting as a designated agent and your name would go on the listing side as the designated agent. So it'd be Keller Williams Atlanta Perimeter, Keller Williams Atlanta Perimeter, check number 4, and then both agents' names. Got it?
And that's the only time you put the agent's names.
Yeah.
Any questions on that one?
Could you be acting as a customer on one side and your client is a listing agent?
Yes, yeah, that happens a lot. So if you're, you know, if you have a listing, you're holding an open house, somebody comes in, that's unrepresented, they want to put a contract on the property, you can treat them as a
Facilitate.
customer and you can facilitate getting a GAR form signed. So they can tell you what terms to put in, you can put the terms in, and then present it to your seller.
You can be their hands, you just can't be their brain. You can't tell them what to do.
You're a transaction
Transaction coordinator.
Yes.
coordinator, yeah.
Um,
No advice, no counsel.
And you can do the same thing if it's a for sale by owner. They would be checked as a customer. The big thing to remember on the signature page, if there's an unrepresented party, you need to have an email address for that unrepresented party on the signature page. Because when they're not represented, you don't have a way to give them notice like you would normally give to the agent whose email is in there. So the only way you can give notice, meaning forms, terminations, amendments, any of that is by having an email address listed. That makes sense?
Any questions on that? All right, C, material relationship disclosure. You know, my rule of thumb is if you're asking me, is this a material relationship, then it probably is. It's no harm in disclosing it. You know, if it's, you know, this is my best friend, this is my sister, this is my, you know, neighbor of 20 years. You just don't want to get yourself into a situation where later on, you know, somebody alleges that, you know, because you had a material relationship that you didn't disclose, that you know, fraudulently provided information or so. I mean, it doesn't really come up. It's one of those things that it does not hurt you to disclose on there.
Now, if you're the agent buying a property or selling a property, there's a GAR special step that I would prefer you use rather than just saying what I see all the time. Selling agent is the buyer. There's a real short, nice special step that says all parties are aware buyer is going to be is licensed in Georgia and a principal in the transaction. Special step 102.
I'm gonna send all
And
this,
on.
everything they're referencing, I'm gonna send you after this.
Time limit of offer.
This one, you know, I said this is a common sense form. This isn't, there's no
It
rule of thumb.
depends on the
It
transaction.
depends on the transaction. This is where you want to be taught, if you're making the offer, you want to be taught, first of all, you want to know what the deal is with your buyer. Are they going to be available? Well, both of them. You want to make sure that everyone's going to be available to look at this and to negotiate it. So you got to call
for a cruise.
Yeah, you got to call the listing agent. Especially if it's like late on a Friday. You may. A lot of times this is usually 24 hours.
And we say 24 to 48.
Yeah.
24 to 48 is a rule of thumb, but if the sellers list their property and then leave the country all the time, it's the craziest thing. So, if that's the case, you may want to give a little extra. If you talk to the listing agent and she's like, I can't talk to them until, whatever, tomorrow afternoon, you may want to put in a little additional time. If it's a Saturday and you're looking at the property and it's a Saturday afternoon and they have an open house scheduled for 1 o'clock on Sunday or 2 o'clock on Sunday, that's when it usually is, 2 to 4.
Yeah.
You may want the offer to expire before then, so that they have to negotiate with you before they have people come in.
Well, that's the problem, is they don't have to do anything.
They don't have to.
They don't have to respond to your offer within your time frame.
And sometimes they don't. And
A lot of times they don't.
That's why you want to do it.
Do you have to do an amendment to extend that if you're in negotiations
You
beyond
can
that?
send notice. There's a notice form
Okay.
that because you can't do an amendment if you don't have a binding agreement. Amendments are only once you're binding.
So you can do a notice.
So if they don't respond, then the contractor just goes null.
It basically expired.
Right, it's an offer. Right, remember, it's an
Yeah.
offer, it's not a contract yet.
And people will sometimes then counter off of expired contracts. So,
happens all the time.
and they do that all the time. So if that happens, then what do you like to see?
Usually I'll ask for an amendment that says all parties are aware the offer was accepted after the time frame that all parties agree that they have a binding agreement to the terms agreed upon. It's written somewhere. The other thing, where is it? There it is. On each GAR form, there's going to be a date down here. This one is 1/1/19, because we get new forms every year. We also have mid-year changes, which will be June 1st this year. Usually it's May, this year is June. So June 1st, you need to get rid of your 1/1/19 templates and look for the June 6/1. Now, not all forms will have it, but the contract will. The VA loan exhibit will. The seller's property disclosure will. The community, all the normal forms will say 6/1/19.
And you want to make sure that you're using the most up-to-date forms. When these forms change, it is usually in response to something that's happening in the marketplace. So you're going to get the most up-to-date and most applicable information in these new forms. One thing that I see it at least once a month, the community association disclosure, because of the way that has changed so dramatically over the last couple of years. We have agents that are trying to sneak in old versions of it because it reduces the seller's liability if initiation or transfer tax fees change. So be on the lookout for that. Just always make sure that all the forms that you're using are the most up-to-date forms.
So you can ask your co-op agent to provide it, whatever it is, on a 2019 form?
You can ask, they don't have to though.
They don't have to.
You can write that as a special step in your offer though. If they have a 2018 seller's property disclosure or community association, you can write a special step asking that the seller provide the property disclosure and community disclosure on GAR 2019 forms as part of your offer. Because there are significant changes, makes a difference, could make a difference.
And a lot of times, we'll see it at the end of the year,
Oh, yeah.
or we'll see it at the beginning of the year, and then we'll see it again in June that, somebody's put a listing putting a listing in now, and there's gonna be changes, so the forms need to be updated. They don't always go back in and update the forms.
And they don't have to.
They don't have to, it's not against the law to use the old forms.
Right.
But, you know, depending on what form it is, you may want to ask them to update it before it gets attached to your offer.
And we'll get a list in the next week or two of all the changes. They're minor changes for June 1st. A little, couple of verbiage changes, a little, you know, change this word to that word. The VA loan exhibit, there's the section that talks about all the things the seller has to pay. That's being completely revamped. So that's going to be a form you definitely want to be sure you're using the most current, which will be, again, June 1st. Okay, any questions on
Page 1.
everything that we just went
On
over?
page 1.
Again, it all, everything's in there that we just
Yes.
talked about on the front page.
So, my question is, one of the contracts, American Home Shield, they give us the $75 desk fee. How do we disclose that in our contract?
You don't disclose it in the contract.
Oh, you don't?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
You have to, you should disclose it to your client,
Okay.
but doesn't go in the contract.
Okay.
Right, because it has nothing to do with the other side,
Right. And it
Would you
doesn't
put-
happen until after closing.
Oh, okay. I
So,
just didn't know how that.
yeah.
but would you put a special stip in the buyer brokerage agreement?
You could, but
Is that something that they have like with the office, or are they just informal? Because it could be on like an affiliated business disclosure.
well, we disclose on, actually, that's true, it's on the affiliated our marketing disclosure. It talks about home warranty companies and how we might receive a fee.
Okay.
So when
that
you
should
get
be
a buyer brokerage agreement signed, when you get a listing agreement signed, you should have the wire fraud disclosure signed at that time and the affiliated marketing disclosure.
Oh.
And the newest one is dated February 2019. Those should be signed. They don't have to be part of the contract, but they should be part of your buyer brokerage agreement and part of your listing agreement.
Since you brought that up, now it has it where both the buyer signs it and the seller?
It's
Or
just-
that's just because it could be either one?
Because
Yes.
it can be
Okay,
either one. So
all right.
if it's your seller, then only our client has to sign.
Jeannie, I'm gonna look into
Fixing
having
that.
2 forms.
Or just
Or just say
Or just
client.
have
Or
clients.
just have client.
Client.
It's
We'll
a
just
Word
call it
document.
client.
Yeah,
so
that's
you
why I
should
wasn't
change
sure,
it.
so I ended,
Yeah.
both people signed it the
Yeah,
last
you
time.
don't
so.
have to. Exhibits, again, this is why you need to get familiar with this, because all your exhibits are there, but plus they're already listed there with the number of the form that you need. But be sure you're checking what you're attaching as an exhibit. Preferably give it a letter, A, B, C, D,
Yeah.
that matches. And then if you have something off the wall, there's a other down there. Like if you want to attach the pre-qual letter, or a
Right, but
copy
do-
of the earnest money, or the FMLS printout.
I always send the pre-approval letter. But I have not been marking it as a part of the contract.
You don't have to. You don't have to. Not if you have a loan exhibit attached, that's got what you need.
I feel like proof of sale, if it's cash,
Yeah,
is usually checked and attached.
yeah. I mean, the all cash exhibit has how many days you have to get proof of funds. But your backup agreement's there, all your loan exhibits are there, lead-based paint. Lease purchase, try to stay away from as much as possible, please. Because 1 out of 100 closes. Loan assumptions, we don't see a lot of. Sale or lease a buyer's property exhibit, contingency exhibit is used a lot these days. Of course, the property disclosure, temporary occupancy agreement.
And we're not gonna go over the property disclosure today, but just know that sellers are not required to provide a property disclosure. And a lot of times there are a lot of instances where you are not gonna get one. If it is, a foreclosure, they don't do it. If it's,
Estate.
if it's an estate, a lot of times you won't get one because the kids are selling a parent's property that they've never lived in,
Yeah.
or just a relative,
Yeah.
and, they've never been in the property. A lot of times if it's been used as a rental for several years, they're not gonna fill one out. So just know it's not abnormal to get one. Your buyer should be doing an inspection regardless of whether that's on there and regardless of whether or not what it says.
Right.
I just had a situation where the seller they said in their seller disclosure that the air conditioning units were both 4 years old, and it ends up one was 4 years old and one was 19.
Yeah.
And so we put in a full price offer. So we went back and said, we want $3,000 towards heating and air because it's very likely this unit's gonna go. And you disclosed it wrong on your seller's degree. And they just, it was just a mistake. I said, it was a mistake, but it's in writing. And
Yeah,
your little writing-
if you read the bold paragraphs of the seller's property disclosure, it says, "We have filled this out to the best of our knowledge."
Well, they knew.
And, well, I mean,
They knew.
you have to prove.
Well, they knew they had only replaced one 3 years ago.
Well, I'm just saying, that's,
Yeah.
They kinda-
But this is negotiation.
It was
It's not-
negotiation,
You
yeah.
couldn't sue them over
it
that.
is real
No.
But
hard.
you can negotiate.
It's
We
real hard to go
negotiated.
back.
It
Right.
was just,
Right. Sellers.
I mean, if you have proof of it, it is
Who wants to fight?
technically fraud. But then what usually happens is if you have proof of it, that's when you get them to give you money.
That's what happened.
And this does not happen very often, trust me, because it says to the best of their knowledge. The seller can almost always say, well, that's what I thought. It's very rare that you have something in writing or somebody has told you,
They told
verbally
us
for
the home
everyone to use.
warranty. Oh yeah, the home warranty covered one unit 4 years ago. What about the other one?
Yeah, it's still really hard to get out of
Okay.
the contract on that.
We
sort
didn't
of
want to get out of it, we just
technicality,
wanted money.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
or even to get money. I mean, it's again one of those things where
You negotiate
just
during due
you
diligence.
negotiate it.
Which is like she did.
What we did, and we got it.
Yeah. And that's another point with your seller's property disclosure. If you're listing a house, you never touch these forms, by the way. You never, ever put a pen to that form. The seller fills it out. You should review it to be sure that they filled it out accurately. It didn't.
And if they didn't, gently remind them, hey, I thought you said that only one of your AC units was 4 years old.
Right.
Maybe, you should go ahead and amend this. Or, hey, you mentioned to me that the property was in a floodplain. Perhaps you should take another look at this section of the disclosure and fix it.
Yeah.
And also the fixtures on the last page.
That's always the problem.
Look through that really well with your sellers, and if you know they mentioned that they did or did not want to take something and then it's checked wrong on there, again, point that out to them, or even just kind of even go through that with them and just be like, okay, so just to be clear, we are leaving that second fridge that's down in the basement.
We're leaving the chandelier in the dining room.
Yeah, we're leaving this, we're leaving that. Don't fill it out for them, but
No.
again, just give it the once over with them.
Because it's
Just make sure
overwhelming to them.
It
So
is. Yeah.
it helps to.
And sometimes they don't understand exactly what things mean on there,
Right.
or they,
Ice maker was the one that got us
They
a
got a lot
couple
of
years
people.
ago. They checked ice maker. Well, they thought the ice maker in the fridge. The buyer thought it was the ice maker under the counter, or vice versa. I forget how it worked.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was over an ice maker.
So now I have a question, because on thermostats, some people now are, if they put in the
The ring
Nest a
of the
few
Nest.
years ago, they were kind of expensive. They've now significantly dropped in price. So in this contract, they put that they're taking the Nest. What do they have to put?
The form says that they will replace it with equal or better value.
So why are they taking it?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I think
My son gave it to me. I mean, I've seen that one. I'm taking it because it was a gift.
I think that
But
I
they
think
have-
it was a real problem, like you said, back when they were really
When they-
expensive,
yeah.
and that's when people were yanking them
Take
out
them.
and putting
We're not
in the
seeing
cheap
that
ones
problem.
back in.
Ring
It's
doorbells.
happening a little less. The
Yeah.
ring now is
I was just-
probably our hot button one.
Yeah.
Just tell, you just gotta tell them, like, okay, if you're gonna take that, know that you still have to replace it with something.
Right, so that's what
Right.
I've.
Of equal
Of equal
value.
value.
So you can't take out this beautiful Nest thermostat and put the little doohickey back up
Take the
there.
like old school slide.
The original, yeah.
And best to do any of that swapping before you take pictures,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we
So-
have,
They should have done it right prior.
So the listing photos don't show
right,
a desk.
yeah. And with your buyer, go over the form, the fixtures list too
That's what
as
we
well.
Say, make sure you know you're not getting
Yes,
this.
and you're not getting that,
You're not
or
getting
you are
this.
getting this, or, yeah.
Are you sure you want that second fridge that barely works and is like 50 years old? You know, we can ask them to, you know,
Haul
pull
it
that
off.
out if you don't want it.
Yeah. And then special steps.
Which I think, is it Georgia Power that will come and get those real old fridges?
I don't know.
Somebody, I think we had one picked up because it came with our house and it was 45 years old because they suck so much energy out.
Mm.
So we will be scheduling our Contracts 102.
Yeah, so
soon,
we'll go over
that where we'll go over
more.
exhibits and amendments and maybe special steps.
Yeah.
Special steps, they've put in an entire page, and I think it's just because of how the
It's the
form.
way it
It's just how the
formatted.
form
Yeah.
fell now. It used to, you didn't used to have a whole page of
You
steps.
really don't.
I will tell you, if you're putting an entire page of special steps in there, I don't close a lot of contracts that look like that. So, you know, keep your steps tight. Use the GAR forms if at all possible. If you are not going to use a GAR step or one of the ones provided by the office, have anyone else take a look at it.
Be sure it's
Get
clear.
one of us to look at it, or have somebody else take a look at it. I just helped somebody get out of a contract based on a poorly written special step.
Because
by another
the
agent.
step needs to state who's doing it, at whose expense, what they're doing, and what happens if they don't do it.
So, another half. We had a house, they found mold. So we did very clear of exactly how we wanted to take care of it. I mean, step by step. But if we put that as a special step or amendment, now the appraiser has to come out a second time to make sure it's
And
been done. But that's how you have it.
I mean, if you want to get it done, then
No, I'm just
Yeah.
asking, that's what we did it right.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, we did
mean-
it right, but.
if it's a significant enough, I got a call yesterday where there's asbestos in the basement, and so they're like, oh, but you know, they wanted to like do it after closing. I'm like, you can't do an amendment and put that in there and not have it be a red flag for the lender. But also, when it's something that significant, you want it completed before closing
That's what we
anyways.
wanted.
So, you know, I mean, yes, the lender, but they just go out there to make sure that it's done. It's
Right.
really not. I cannot remember any closing that I've done where it's been held up because the work was done and the lender's appraiser didn't get out there. I mean, they want to close it too.
Right.
So,
Yeah, true.
and as long as you have it done, you know, several days prior to closing, you know,
4 days
don't-
before.
Yeah, don't run it right up to
And
the
that's a
closing
good
date.
point. When you do your amendment to address concerns, request the repairs be completed 5 days prior to closing, and that receipts and warranties are provided 5 days prior to closing.
I had 2 calls on Friday where it was closing day and they had gone the day before and none of the major repairs had been completed. And know this, lenders do not like to hold money in escrow for repairs anymore. It's like a handful of closings where it has happened recently, and usually the lender's holding the money, and the lender has to go back out and take a look and release it, and it's usually a very short time frame, and it's never for anything that is any sort of health or safety concern. It's so rare that we can do this anymore. So really, it needs to be taken care of prior to closing. Once we get down to the closing date, there's very little that we can do about things that have not been taken care of. Your buyer's either sucking it up and crossing their fingers that the seller's going to take care of it after closing, or you're delaying the closing at that point.
Or you do an amendment that says this will be done by a certain date, this amendment survives the closing, but then if the seller doesn't do it, then you go to court.
Yeah, once
There's
you
no
close,
easy way.
there's no easy way. Once you close, you lose leverage over them.
Yeah.
So really what you want to do is be out there 5 days prior to closing so that you have time. And sometimes they fix it, but they don't fix it how it's supposed to be fixed or how you wanted it fixed. You know, they have somebody come and do a crappy job and, you know, you end up, and it's not done to the specs that y'all put into your contract, so you have to send somebody out to fix it again.
And if you're the listing agent and you know your seller is supposed to do these repairs, I strongly suggest you follow up, go out and look, because a lot of
Yeah.
times the listing agent, their excuse at closing is, oh, I just assumed he did them.
Yeah.
They never went out and looked.
We get a lot of sellers, you know, supposed to
Mhm.
hire somebody in to come do the repairs. They do it themselves and patch it up. The listing agent hasn't seen it, so then it's a big
Yeah.
surprise to everybody when they go back out and look and see what a terrible job.
Right. So that's why you need to be specific. If it's supposed to be a licensed contractor, if it's supposed to be a licensed plumber, electrician, HVAC person, or if a handyman can do it all, that's fine. But, you know, if you don't state
Who's gonna do it?
who's gonna do it as far as their expertise, then you get what you get.
And this is a situation too where know your client.
Yeah.
If you have a client that has been high maintenance from the get-go, they're going to be one of those people that do not want to close 3 days before closing because repairs are not done. So, you know, make sure that you are also meeting the client's needs. Sometimes they don't care. Sometimes they're like, you know, whatever.
No
I
big
just
deal.
need to move. I'm
Yeah.
gonna get it fixed later. I don't care. But you know your client and set expectations for everybody based on that. Yes.
On some of these older homes, it seems to me if you're listing with somebody that before you even put it up for sale, you'd want to take care of these repairs, right? Because some of these older homes, how can you, in 10 days, how can you get this stuff done? Or how can you guarantee any of our vendors can get it done?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a talk you have to have with your seller. Some of them don't have money, and they don't want to do it. Sometimes they think their house is fine, you know. So then it's kind of like, okay, well, let's wait and see how the inspection goes. But yeah, I mean, I think taking care of things ahead of time definitely makes for a smoother transaction. I mean, you all know. I mean, you can tell in the neighborhood when the house is about to go up for sale because suddenly it gets painted and the lawn people come out and fix it up. What?
These are new agents. They don't know.
Oh, I'm just saying, like in my own neighborhood, like when all of a sudden I see a house being spruced up, and then it is not surprising that I see a for sale sign, in a couple weeks. So it is a good idea to try go in there and talk. That's also when you talk to them about staging and decluttering, and it's all part of some of the same conversations. If it's something that you can see without being an inspector, then you probably want to go ahead and get it taken care of, and just tell them that it's going to bring more value to your property if the better.
And it might help it sell faster.
And
I mean,
it might help
what
it sell
I
faster.
used to do is I would walk through with a seller. This is old school. This goes 37 years back now. But we would walk through the house, and I'd say, I want you to pretend you're a buyer. Tell me what you see. And the light bulb's out here. There's some wood rot over here, and they would pick it out, and they would take care of little things. But it worked.
Okay, girls, we have 5 minutes. So
No, well, I'm good, but.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. Does anyone else have any questions?
okay,
We got a few.
before we do the signature page.
Just,
Okay.
yeah.
Sure.
Again, if you have an unrepresented party, you've got to have an email address so you can give notice. Just remember that. And all your information has to be there, as well as the other agents. Real estate license number, brokerage firm license number. Those two things are required by the Real Estate Commission. If they ever flag that file and that number's missing, you'll be fined about $500 and have to take 3 hours of CE. So.
Make sure you have the email
And
address
your
that you're
email.
using.
Yeah, that's it.
Because that's where you receive notice. We see a lot of times, I have 4 email addresses that I use. But, you know, a lot of times y'all will start out, you know, as Renee Dillon at kw.com, but then you're gonna change it to, you know, Renee Sells Homes at kw.com, right? But make sure it gets changed in here, whatever email address that you're using. And you said Realtor membership already, right?
I didn't, but you should be proud to be a Realtor. It is a privilege and an honor, and there's a difference between a Realtor and an agent. You know, there are 90-some thousand licensees in the state of Georgia, but only, I think it's 60 now, are Realtors, which means they belong to a board of Realtors.
60,000.
Yeah. 60,000.
Really? There's that many that are not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm
And they
shocked
don't
by
have to
this.
go by the code of ethics, you know, anyway.
And you said it's okay to just abbreviate ARA
Yeah.
rather than spelling out Atlanta Realtors
Yeah.
Association.
Yeah, and if you just put Atlanta, that'd be fine too. But ARA is the Atlanta Realtors Association. If you're a member of that one, there are some that are members of different boards, right? Maybe in here, I don't know.
Okay,
Okay.
did you, binding.
There's
binding
gonna be
agreement.
some language changing on that June 1st as well.
Are they? Where are
Okay,
they
do we
changing
wanna, did you wanna save it or?
Save it till I
Okay.
know what they're changing it to, so.
Sure. You want that?
No, I'm just trying to see, I don't think it's in.
Isn't there something about binding just for the new agents that after everyone sells it, if you go back to sign it, it could take out the signature, so you have to.
That's
That's a
dot
dot loop
issue.
feature, I
Right.
think.
But I think you just need to let I think new agents need to know that that's a
Well-
Stacy thing to tell them.
Yeah.
If you represent the buyer and you're doing all your stuff in dot loop, yay, like we teach you, that if you're gonna be the one filling in the binding agreement, you need to first download
As a PDF.
and which turns it into a PDF, then re-upload it, archive the first one, then you can add a text file and a date to do it. So I know that if you've never done it before, that may sound crazy.
Just ask one of us to show you.
Yeah.
Right. Ask somebody.
But you
Don't wanna wipe out.
always want a binding agreement date filled in, because that's the date everything works off of, every single thing except the closing.
And if for some reason, I mean, I couldn't even follow that with the tech, what you just said. So you can always, I think there is a form
There is.
that you can also send
Binding
over.
agreement notification.
Yes, that says when the binding agreement date is.
And all parties sign it. But that's the date everything works off of, your due diligence, earnest money, appraisal, financing, everything.
And since we talked about green sheets, in the green sheet, they call it the contract date, that we're calling the binding agreement date. They're one and the same. Contract date in green sheet world.
They're just gonna add a sentence to clarify when agreement becomes binding. That's all it says so far.
Any questions?
What do you wanna, is there something else you want to do?
Well, we don't have time for the counter, so we'll save that. I just wanna, schedule our next.
Okay.
All right, any questions?
I mean, oh, come on, really?
Go home
No.
and read the contract.
Right, read the contract. So,
Read the contract.
when you have questions, try Diane and me, and before bothering Lynn, because Lynn's had way more people to help, but
Yeah, and if you
and
haven't,
text is a beautiful thing.
if you haven't written a contract, or maybe after you do one, or after you've done a couple, come back to the class. A lot of this is gonna make a lot more sense
Yeah, I
once
mean,
you've
how many
done
times
it.
have you
Yeah.
been here?
Well, yeah, I've written two, and this is very helpful, so.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah,
Yeah.
once you actually have to put it into practice, you're gonna have more questions about it, and like I said, things are gonna make a little bit more sense, so come back.
And I will,
Pretty regularly.
if it's your first contract and Diane or Stacy aren't available, I'll review it for you. Just know, I don't get any notices from Dot Loop. Do not ever send anything to me that says, I need this signed or I need you to review through Dot Loop. Because I have 2,200 plus agents. So I have no notifications for .loop, or I would just be covered up.
So email.
So email me
Yeah.
directly.
And if you
or
have
text
questions,
me
all
and say,
All
can
staff,
you look
yeah.
at this
all
address?
staff, yeah.
Yeah, all staff, we all don't get notifications from .loop actually. So if you just share, I don't know, something to us through
Like a
.loop.
withdrawal form.
Withdrawal form, terminations, we
Yeah.
actually don't get anything through .loop. Always email us directly with it attached. Or you can say it's in the loop, but
Yeah, I
send
mean, you
us
can
a
send me a
direct
text
email.
that says, can you review the loop at 123 Main Street? I'll be happy to.
Otherwise, we'd get a notification every time anyone changed anything in .loop,
Yeah.
and there's 340 agents here, and she's
Right.
got multiple offices.
Right.
So we just had to turn it off and then email us directly if you need anything at all.
Did you have questions?
Are y'all gonna be doing something on the listing agreements soon?
Isn't that covered in
Or did you?
Ignite or not?
We have it with them, I'll talk to them.
Yeah, we have it
It's just
before,
been
but we
another
can.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, are we glad these ladies came?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm good. I just would encourage you guys to come take a picture of this and maybe look at it later. I know you guys
I'm
have
gonna take a picture of this. I think it's great.
just so you can look at it later and you have it if you ever need to know about earnest money.
You worked hard on that.
What?
You worked hard on that.
Well, yeah, and I just, you guys were in the city. Yes, thank
You
you.
worked real hard on that. I love it.
And green sheets as soon as you're binding.
And
As
if
soon
you
as
don't
you're
know
in
how,
contract.
grab me.
Or me, call us, text us.
And any contract, once it goes binding, even if there's not earnest money, needs to be turned in with a green sheet so I can review it. This has been the week of, we closed 2 days ago and I did the contract to review. It's a little late then if there's something missing.
After this,
Okay. So is,
you too. At 2.
thank you for asking. Yeah.